Shot by Buddha. Facebook Gaming in the building.
Into the end zone! Five Nations, stand up!
Should I play Madden today? Nah. More AFC South regurgitated Tennessee Titan content? Nah. Let's do the NFC South. Last night we did AFC South. I had a good time with it. I thought it was fun. Why not to our sister division over the way, NFC South. Before we get started, who do y'all think had the best offseason in the NFC South? I think I want to go AFC East and then NFC East. Then I'm going to go NFC North, AFC North, and then NFC North. I think we're going to go like that. Oh, Keith, you ain't got to tell me. That was a rhetorical question. We're not playing Madden. Everybody who I clicked on Madden back there, they all look like this. Touchdown. Everybody playing Madden streaming it looks unhappy. All right. So we did our rankings with the Titans, Colts, Texans, Jaguars. NFC South. Division 1 last year by the Panthers. Normally dominated by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Atlanta Falcons, who played spoiler, and the New Orleans Saints. Say you like the Falcons draft. I just don't know about that quarterback situation. All right, so let's get into it. I'm going to say, if we're going on who had the best offseason and who had the best draft, this is the way I'm going to rank it. Don't shoot the messenger. But I'm going to go out and say, I think the Atlanta Falcons had the worst offseason. And let me tell you why. First, let's start with this situation between Kirk Cousins, Michael Penix Jr., who ended the season injured, Tua Tagovailoa coming over from the Dolphins, who you got two quarterbacks that have a very, very, very strong history of injury. And you gave up your first round pick that the Rams used to take Ty Simpson because you swapped for James Pierce Jr. Now, James Pierce Jr. beat his case, but who knows what the NFL front office and Roger Goodell will hand down as you miss your first round pick and likely your best edge rusher, James Pierce Jr., a rookie standout from last year, will miss games this year because of off the field issues. So I can't say you had the best draft in the NFC South if you don't have your first round pick or the player that you use with that pick along to go with. I think we will all say that we think that Kirk Cousins, it pains me to say this, is a better quarterback than Tua Tagovailoa. Even though getting Tua, a Bama boy, as a backup is good because you got two lefties. But Michael Penix Jr. has never, in my memory, you got two quarterbacks who've never finished a full season in the NFL. So that's why I would have to start by saying the Atlanta Falcons, to me, had the worst offseason, and they hired a coach who I didn't like anything. When I say anything, big screen. I didn't like anything of the way he handled the Cleveland Browns situation last year. I didn't like it. All right. So Stefanski is over here. You have Penix. I love their running backs with Bijan Robinson and Brian Robinson. I love Drake London. Y'all know how I feel about Zachariah Branch. They brought over Dotson. They got Zacchaeus. But I don't see the depth in their wide receiver room. They was able to figure out a way to keep Kyle Pitts, bringing back veteran Austin Hooper for his second go around. And then I like their offensive line, Jake Matthews, Lindstrom. They got a couple goons on the offensive line. But when you get over here to the defensive line, if you're saying that James Pierce Jr. probably will face a suspension, like Diablo and Harris, Jalen Walker, and Deshaun Hand, but it's going to be thin up front for them. They're going to need some of these younger guys to step up. And with AJ Terrell, Jesse Bates, Xavier Watts, those guys are some really good players. But I just feel like this team is incomplete. So let's look at their draft. Let's look at the Atlanta Falcons draft. And then I'll get called back up to y'all comments in a second once we go through this. All right, no first round pick, like I said, because of James Pierce Jr. to the Rams. So the Rams held their first pick. And your second pick is the brother of AJ Terrell, Avion Terrell, who I like him as a cornerback. I think he'll find his way onto the field. Zachariah Branch getting to stay in Georgia. I think he'll have a expanded role in their offense. Yet to be seen about if Georgia actually stunted his growth with the route tree. And then linebacker Kendall Daniels from Oklahoma. Antonio Thompson, D-tackle from Washington. I like Harold Perkins Jr. I think, that's a pretty good pickup in the 6th round. I like his skill set if he continues to fully heal coming off the injury he had last year. And then Ethan O, offensive tackle out of Ohio State. I just don't see a lot of impact on the roster. You got 2 linebackers that'll probably play behind the linebackers that are there, which is Christian Harris and Divine Diablo. So looking at this draft, Avion Terrell and Zachariah Branch, to me, seem, correct me if I'm wrong, like the only 2 players in this draft class from the Falcons that actually will see real action. I'm just not so crazy about where the Falcons are right now and what type of team they're going to be with Stefanski. So that's why I got them ranked last. Let me catch y'all comments before I get into the second team. Had to get a new phone. Coop, we back. Corey. What happened to Talia? Bruh just never made it in Maryland. Joe Blacko, what up? Former coach of the year. London gonna get 170 targets. Yeah, I like Perkins, but if you actually did mock draft yourself, you would have seen that Perkins would have never been drafted higher than the 5th round, and 6th round is about right. Which we would have gotten Branch. I like what we got better though. If we would have got Branch in the later rounds and didn't get Carnell Tate, he'd be sitting behind Wandale all game. That's what I'm saying, KT. It's like Cousins was dealing with injury last year along with Penix, and then you bringing in a guy that's more injured than those 2. I love the running back room of the Falcons with Brian Robinson, Bijan Robinson, and if they can get Kyle Pitts the ball, Drake London is always going to be Drake London, but with Dotson and Zacchaeus, I don't see nothing jumping off the page that make me feel like Stefanski is going to take this offense and do anything different than he did in Cleveland. You had Harold Fannin and David Njoku, Jerry Jeudy. Like, I mean, they had talent. They Dylan Sampson and Quinshawn Judkins. He had Nick Chubb before. Like I just don't see nothing from Stefanski that makes me think he's going to come into this division and do anything different than he did in Cleveland. I just don't see it. I think tape more trends for like Jay Jettis or Devontae Adams. That's more of my comp for him. All right, let's move into the team that I think had the second worst offseason. A team that normally dominates the NFC South. Tampa Bay Buccaneers was really able to put a team together when they first brought Baker Mayfield over. Baker Mayfield was only getting $7 million a year for the first couple years. His deal is a deal around the Sam Darnold where it doesn't hold the team back. It's a really good deal. But let me just say it. Mike Evans is a future Hall of Fame wide receiver, and they're finally moving on from Evans. And when I look at this receiving core, Emeka Egbuka is going to be the dog in the room. They drafted Ted Hurst, and they got Tez Johnson last year, along with Mac Millen. But Chris Godwin, I think it's time for the Buccaneers to move on from Chris Godwin being he never is healthy. He never plays the full season. And I think if you're the Buccaneers, you just got to throw Ted Hurst and Tez Johnson in the mix with Egbuka. Cade Otton, they was able to retain him. Bucky Irvin, Kenneth Gainwell, Sean Tucker. Serviceable backs. Bucky Irvin's pretty good, but they lost White. The offensive line is always pretty solid with Wirfs at left tackle. Then you get over to Elijah Roberts, Kalijah Kancey, Vita Vea, Ashawn Robinson, bringing in Ruben Bain. I think their defensive front is pretty solid. You know, Buccaneers are always athletic up front, bringing in Anzalone, Roseboom, and Diaby. They drafted Josiah Trotter, Zion McCollum, Tyke Smith, Winfield Jr., Morrison, and Parrish. They drafted Keontae Scott, but let's be honest, Jamel Dean is one of the best cornerbacks in the league, and they lost him to the Pittsburgh Steelers. So taking your best player out the secondary, we're taking a Hall of Fame wide receiver off, and I felt like the division has been slipping away out of their hands for a few years. And although I feel like they made some decent acquisitions in the draft, and we're about to look at their draft now, I just don't see anything that makes me feel the way I felt the last several years, where I felt like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had that division in a chokehold for about a handful of years. Going back to when they got Tom Brady and then swapping over to having Baker Mayfield. During that whole time, the Buccaneers won the division pretty much every year. So let's look at their draft. Getting Ruben Bain at pick 15, I think, was a great value. Josiah Trotter. Buccaneers always have good linebackers. Their front seven is always super solid. Getting Ted Hurst at that third receiver spot. If he can be what people think he can be, it's not replacing Mike Evans, but it's going to give you some production of a receiver that you can grow with. I love Keontae Scott. I think he's probably going to play their nickel by the end of the year. Then they got a D tackle from Clemson, Cape Hart, offensive guard from Notre Dame, Billy Schrauth, and tight end Bauer Sharp in the 6th round as their last pick. I think their first 4 picks jump off the page: Bain, Trotter, Hurst, and Scott. Buccaneers always draft well, but did they miss their window with Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans and having Egbuka come in last year? Like, was last year a premonition of the Buccaneers are going to have more of a reset than a reload, taking a step backwards? They were 8-9 last year. I don't see a world where like this Buccaneers roster jumps up and wins like 12 or 13 games. I don't see it. All right, let me get caught up on chat before we go to the third team. You think Pitts will have an elite year? I don't know if elite is the word. I think solid. I think he's way more than a 5th or 6th round talent. How do you, if a player was injured and it took him a long time to recover, Perkins is a good linebacker, but he's not like 6'3". He's like a 6 foot tall linebacker. I mean, Deontay Lawson for Bama went undrafted, and I felt like that was an easy comp. There just wasn't a real reason for somebody to take Perkins high. I thought about a 5th or 6th round was about as good as it was going to get for Perkins. I feel like Evans leaving the Buccaneers is like Derrick Henry leaving the Titans. Like, he gave you a decade. He gave you a Hall of Fame career. He wants to finish his career in a place where they 49ers are going to make it easy for Mike Evans. Impulse, what up? It's that time of year again. Say it with me, Panthers to the Super Bowl. I mean, he showed up at the perfect time. We're doing NFC South today. I mean, I don't think people realize how good of a player Jamel Dean is. Like, you losing one of the best corners in the league and one of the best receivers in the league in the same year. Like, somebody who's the identity of both sides of the ball. Jalen McMillan is good, but I feel like Godwin's time is over. You know, it's like Ibuka is the dog in the room. Now, if you can get Ted Hurst, Tez Johnson, and McMillan to step up, but Gainwell and Bucky Irvin don't jump off to me and make me feel like they're going to run through the NFC South. I was trying to catch you last night to ask you, people have Kyle Pitts linked to us? No. Before we went and got Kyle Pitts, like, why wouldn't we just get David Njoku? Hard to move up front for sure. Pitts could be traded. I think they'll work some kind of deal out. Stefanski loves tight ends. And then they didn't draft they got Bauer Sharp from LSU, but it's not like they drafted somebody high to make you feel like they're going to do something different. You want more in next year's draft quarterback from Oregon? We got to see how this. Y'all remember we did that last year, and people were saying, "Oh no, wait on Cam Ward. Such and such and such and such is going to be there," and all of them were trash this year. And now everybody's saying, "Wait on next year." And then, like, what if Moore and Trinidad Chambliss and Arch Manning have horrible seasons, like Cade Klubnik and some of them other quarterbacks? Drew Aller. He said the Saints are a year away from making playoffs again. Deion Jones, how DC knows how to use him. Him going to get a lot of targets for a tight end. He had a high catch rate last year. I think with Bellinger being there, I think you're going to see more 12 personnel, more so than Gunnar Helm getting more targets. I think the offense will move the ball better and have just by, if you go 3 and out, it's not a lot of targets and rush attempts you can get. Let's say this offense picks up more first downs than they did to start off the first 8 weeks of last year, and the offense gets 15 to 20 more snaps. That's 5 more carries for the running backs. You know, that's 3 to 5 more targets for the tight ends. There's 10 more targets for the wide receivers every game, and it adds up over the course of a season of a team that, you know, Tennessee Titans haven't been able to move the football enough the last few years for people to get as many targets consistently. I think that'll change. That's what I'm saying. I don't see Pitts getting moved unless they just god awful. But I mean, the Falcons have enough talent that I think this whole division will all be kind of close, like it always is. It'll come down to some tiebreakers. All right, team I thought had the third the second best offseason is the New Orleans Saints. Now let's get into New Orleans. All right. Kellen Moore had a good end to last year. Tyler Shough had a good end to last year. You know, we talking about last year coming in as Spencer Rattler was QB1. Them picking up Travis Etienne, one of the best running backs in the league, mixed with Kamara and Devin Neal. I think that's a solid running back room. Olave now has some breathing room since they lost Shaheed. Jordan Tyson, if he comes back healthy, I think that's a nasty duo of receivers with Olave, Tyson, Devon Vale. You got Bryce Lance, Mason Tipton, Barry Brown, who will be good on special teams. Y'all just got rid of Shaheed. Barry Brown is a really good return man, a dual function for him. I like the way that Kellen Moore calls plays. Juwan Johnson is a sleeper at tight end. A lot of people don't know how good he is. To go with Noah Fant and Georgia's Oscar Delp. Oscar Delp is 6'4", 6'5". He runs a 4.4 at tight end. That's a very athletic tight end room as the days that they're moving on from Taysom Hill. The last few years, the Saints have spent a lot of their draft picks on their offensive line. Need a little bit more depth there behind the guys that they brought in. But this is what scares me about having an offensive-minded coach. Alontae Taylor, thank you, Saints. Y'all sent Alontae Taylor to Nashville. Kool-Aid McKinstry, Quincy Riley, Justin Reed, Blackman, Howden. I don't see the depth at defensive back. I mean, Lattimore was to the Commanders the year before. The defense, which y'all were known for, with Big Cam, obviously Brian Brees, this defense is starting to regress a little bit. Can Chase Young be the alpha edge? This Saints defense don't look as good as it once was. This is going to be a team that in the future is going to rely on its offense in division instead of a team that used to rely on its defense. They traded for Tyree Wilson, former first-round pick from the Raiders. I know the Saints like big 6'6", 6'7" edges like Chase Young, Tyree Wilson, but I gotta see can Kellen Moore and the Saints front office build a solid defense up, because nothing really just jumps off the page from the Saints defense that we're used to seeing. That's the only fear that scares me about the Saints. And let's get into their draft before we dive deeper into that Saints defense. And I'm gonna explain what I mean when y'all see this draft. Jordan Tyson, Christian Miller at D tackle, I think is a pick that people are overlooking. I think I think up front the Saints is gonna have it. Are they going to have the depth all the way around to have the defense? Oscar Delp, the tight end from Georgia. Jeremiah Wright, offensive guard from Auburn. Bryce Lance, Trey Lance's brother, another wide receiver added to the offense. Lorenzo Styles Jr. Can they shape him up to be a player, or is he just the athlete that tested well? Obviously, I talked about Barry Brown. I think he'll be more of an impact on special teams and on the offense out the gate. And then cornerback TJ Hall from Iowa, more than likely a special teams level player. All right, let me get back caught up on the comments. 2 times, what up? Statman, I don't think Nick Singleton out the gate will get the touches. I've explained yesterday that Tony Pollard is due $9 million. $2 million of it is guaranteed, and him and Tajay, they're on their contract years. I expect Nick Singleton to probably get the ball 5 to 8 times a game if he's impactful. No runaway winner in the South is truly a coin flip. Penn State legend Jawan Johnson. Here you go. Oscar Depp gone ball. I think we should have went edge in the second round. Saints defense is not. See, that's the problem. And Demetrius, you said it. I can't say it better than what you said it. The Saints defense is not scary. When you're talking about having Marshawn Lattimore and Alontae Taylor on the outside, when you talk about the Honey Badger, Big Cam, Demario Davis, like some of the guys that we used to seeing on the Saints defense, it's not there any longer. And with an offensive minded coach, does this defense take a step back in a division where the NFC South always has and always has had a very athletic division? Now, they might not put it together as a football team, but as far as just having, the Michael Vicks to the Julius Peppers, like this always been freak athletes in the NFC South. Luke Kuechly, Cam Newton, like traditionally, it's always been freak athletes in the NFC South. And I don't know why that is, but they always have had freak athletes. Saints turning into the Bengals. See, what happens is teams have great defenses and can't score the football. So sometimes they try to go with an offensive philosophy to sway the pendulum. Titans did that when they went away from Vrabel, when they went with Brian Callahan, and the offense never got better and the defense got too thin. Kellen Moore just came off a Super Bowl with the Eagles. I'm pretty sure he knows he's got to have a stout defense, and he's trying to put weapons around his young quarterback Tyler Shuck to see what he's got. The Saints are finally up out of all the nonsense from, just think of the Saints. No Taysom Hill, no Michael whatchamacallit, the wide receiver that was always there that never played. We finally passed the era of the Saints having all that looming over their head where their books are clear. So maybe they go out in free agency and they start signing some veterans to fill in some of these holes. And then next year's draft attack defensively. So that's what you want. You want a good balance, offense to defense. And when you look at the teams that played well last year in the playoffs, Broncos, Patriots, Rams, and the Seahawks, teams that were balanced on both sides of the ball. Two-time was popping. Steve Smith, CMC. Yeah, I mean a lot of athletes. All right. Now let's get into the team that I think had the best offseason of all the teams in the NFC South. Who surprised everybody, not named Tone and Rabbit, by winning the NFC South last year, and that is the only Carolina Panthers. And the Carolina Panthers did it the way that I always talk about it. You got a rookie quarterback, and you put a team around him on offense and defense. They took the fifth-year option on Bryce Young. So you got Chuba Hubbard. You lose Rico Dowdle, but Jonathan Brooks should be ready to step in now with Travis Etienne's brother. The Etienne brothers is going to be in the NFC South. Tetroy McMillan is a goon. Jalen Coker, goon. Xavier Legette haven't lived up to what we wanted to see out of him, but he's been improving. And they went out and got one of the receivers. Y'all know I was crazy. Led the SEC last year, Chris Brossel. They have the tall trees in Carolina. T-Mac, Coker, Legette, Brossel. We talking about 6'4" across the board with speed at wide receiver. And then Jimmy Horn Jr. and John Mechie, the twitchy guys in between to fit in between those holes in the zones. Jatavian Sanders, tight end out of Texas, Tommy Tremble, a young crew of tight ends, and they've done that while managing to have a pretty solid front with Iquanu, Taylor Moton, Robert Hunt, and then they drafted a center that was on my board too as well, Sam Heck. And then who I think could wind up being one of the better tackles in the draft is Monroe Freeland. So, not only have they addressed the skill position players, they've still dedicated to getting two of the better linemen in this draft, and Sam Heck and Monroe Freeland. People that people felt like were day one guys that could come in and start at their respective positions. All right. And not only did they do that, Lee Hunter, who I think is one of the best big gap eating D tackles in the draft from Texas Tech. They got Derek Brown, Bobby Brown, Tashawn Wharton, Nick Scourton, edge that they drafted. And then they went and spent some money and got Jalen Phillips off the Eagles, who left the Dolphins, who was on my free agent board for the Titans last year. And then they went and took, to me, the heart and soul of the Jaguars defense. One of the reasons why I had the Jaguars finishing last in offseason moves in the AFC South is Devin Lloyd. If y'all haven't seen Devin Lloyd play, Devin Lloyd is as big as a lineman and as fast as a defensive back playing middle backer. And then you got obviously J.C. Horn, Morick, Scott Mike Jackson. And they got one of the guys that I liked is Zakee Wheatley. So let's get into their draft. Let's start with saying one of the better tackles in this draft was Monroe Freeland. Then turning around and going right back in the trenches and getting Lee Hunter. If you think about David Bailey and Romello Height, the reason why they get to run like that is because Lee Hunter eats up linemen in the middle. And then going with SEC's leading receiver, Chris Brazel, and then turn around Will Lee, who I thought was going to get drafted sooner than he did, winds up going to the Panthers in a perfect fit, a tall, physical, outside athletic corner from Texas A&M. And then they get Sam Heck, who some people thought was the best center in the draft. And then a safety that I had on my board, Zakee Wheatley. Guy can find the football. That was a really, 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 really good draft. If y'all been watching my mocks, y'all have seen me talk about every single player that they drafted. And just seeing where the Carolina Panthers coming off of winning the division, having a really good draft, and then adding more talent in the offseason to their roster. I just think the Carolina Panthers impressed me the most of all the teams in the NFC South. They look like the most complete team. They didn't lose anything significant, and it seems like they added more and more talent and depth to the team that they got, which is all young. They didn't just go try to buy a bunch of veterans with names. They went and got a bunch of young players. Even when you think about Jalen Phillips is like coming into his second contract, J.C. Horn, Trevon Moore, like all these guys are young. All right, now let's get caught up in the chat. He says, state of change our defense. We had the worst defense with Cam, DeMario, and Alante. And that's what I want to see. With a whole bunch of new names and faces with an offensive-minded coach, can that defense grow? B. Walker, what it do, player? But also you got to think about the Saints defense, and at the end of Derek Carr, the offense was not helping that defense out at all. They was leaving them on the field a big portion of the game. He said, yeah, I'm giving the Panthers a little Panthers on the rise. Don't sleep on Mike Jack. They've been at the top of the draft the last 5 years. It's definitely time. Yeah, it's like when it's you kind of look at them like the Lions. You remember when the Lions traded Matt Stafford and they had all those first-round draft picks, and then those guys turned into some guys that led the Lions to make a run in the playoffs? Like, it's time for the Panthers to see, was it fake? Was it an aberration? Is it a delusion of grandeur that the Panthers can win the division again, not as slipping up and nobody noticing them, that you know they're the division winners from the last year? Can Bryce Young take the next step? He has no excuses. He's got everything around him. They got in the trenches. They got skill position players, and I like that coach. I think that coach has been brought some direction into Carolina. So with that being said, any disagreements about my order of business of who I thought had a good offseason and not, I put a lot of weight on teams making moves and not having draft picks. And as much as I like some of the talent in Atlanta, getting a first round draft pick that you traded for last year that has legal issues where you don't get the player in the pick is just kind of damning to the Falcons right now. He said you and me both already know the answer, but we got to see. I mean, last year some teams turned it around and some teams surprised us, so who knows? Who knows who's ready to take the next step? But that is the NFC South. Y'all got any more questions for your boy? Y'all got any more questions? Because I think I'm going to do the AFC East next. I'm really interested in the Dolphins rebuild. The Dolphins books was so messed up. And then the Patriots, after losing in the Super Bowl, do they have the Super Bowl hangover? You got Mike Vrabel with the off the field issues. Not Stephon Diggs, but Mike Vrabel. The Buffalo Bills, who face so much heartbreak, who tried so hard. Can the Buffalo Bills put it back together and get back to where they feel they should be? And then the Jets, who picked 3 times in the first round, and then they have 3 first round picks next year. Is Aaron Glenn on the hot seat? Is he not on the hot seat? I think we'll come back and do the AFC East. Now, if y'all want, y'all let me know in the chat. We could do AFC East right now in a reset. Y'all let me know. Y'all let me know. You said Falcons over the Saints? Only thing about the Falcons is the Saints know who their quarterback gonna be. Michael Penix ain't ever played an NFL season. Tua ain't never played an NFL season. You got 2 guys coming in, and you don't know who's gonna be healthy enough for the Falcons to play. Love their running back room. Stefanski handled the quarterback in the media horribly last year. And the first round draft pick, James Pierce Jr., he beaten some of his criminal charges. You don't know what the NFL is going to hand down as far as suspension wise. So if this guy misses 6 to 8 games for domestic abuse and stalking suspension, that's gonna hurt them starting the year off. Missing James Pierce Jr. That's why I had to hold the Falcons back. I trust Kellen more in the direction that the Saints offense is going in than I trust Stefanski in what's going on football culture wise in Atlanta. Because Atlanta went on a win streak to end the year, and then they fired the coach and bring in Stefanski. So who knows how that's going to play itself out. We don't know how long he'll be out. Maybe 1 game, maybe 5. Do you think AJ, little brother, will play opposite him or more in nickel? I think he'll play in the nickel, and I think like he'll get a chance to work himself into that role. Because I see him kind of like Keontae Scott and Keith Abney. I think they'll be really good nickel backs because they're physical at the point of attack. But y'all let me know. He said Pierce eking Alden Smith. Nah. Pierce kind of remind me of David Bailey that's coming out now, just super fast off the edge. Just a young screamer. But y'all let me know. Y'all want to do AFC East or do that on the next Shop Talk? Y'all let me know. He said we swept the Panthers with 5th string players. Who played in the playoffs though? That's what y'all got to remember sometimes. Let me know. All right, man. God first in the chat. Y'all ain't say it fast enough, man. God first in the chat, man. We'll be back tonight, man. We'll do the East tonight, man. Hope y'all have a good rest of the day. And y'all know what time it is. Hit that subscribe, like, comment, share. Tap into the daily uploads at 7 a.m. Central Standard Time. If you missed the live streams, you got picture in picture. And if I don't get to any questions during the live streams or the pods, drop them in the comments. I'll make it part of the weekly mailbag. If you're following on the blue, smash those reactions. I know you're OG. Hit that like, comment, share, tap into the daily content that is the shop. If you're new to the shop, you definitely should be tapped in on the green. No ads, up to 50 emotes free for just being a follower. You do not have to be a supporter to unlock picture in picture, late night streams. Follow us on Kick. We also live on Twitch. Look out for the drops, as well as if you have Amazon Prime, it's free $99 to sub to the channel once a month. Don't let Jeff Bezos stick that money back in his pocket. If you don't use it on the shop, use it on another content creator that you like. I still call it Twitter, but follow us on X. We tweet back. Yo, if you missed the daily shop talks, make sure you tap in for the late night cap on the purple and the green. The Discord is always open. Outside of subs, donos, and cash apps, is also another way to support the content. That's by grabbing a trucker hat, a bandana, hoodies, the classic barbershop, Vibe Nation, right out of the official merch store on Tactic, formerly known as Geeks Unleashed. Code Buddha at checkout to